And we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from beautiful downtown Blue Ridge. We're here live at the shops of Sycamore Crossing. We have a lot going on today. It is Blues and Barbecue weekend, but at this time we have a segment that is sponsored by the Georgia Cancer Specialist, and I'm glad to have, no, Dr. Whaley is not here today. Wow, you don't look like Dr. Whaley.
Thanks.
I'm here with Cami Ledford, nurse practitioner. And Cami, thank you for coming in and filling in. Dr. Whaley's out on a trip. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. You'll have to come back and join us again. I can already tell.
I plan on it. Thanks.
All right, good. Now, we had a whole list of things. Now, Dr. Whaley and I, we get in some different directions, but we want to talk about back to school, kids' health, the lunchrooms, the kind of things that parents are sending their kids into, some healthy tips for when your kid's at school that you should be sharing with your children.
Yeah, so we just went back to school. I have a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 2-year-old, so no one will eat the same thing. So what I started to realize is that I was sending my kids to school hoping that they were eating in the lunchroom. I was putting money on the thing, on their little card, but I noticed that at 3 o'clock I was picking them up and they're starving to death and they just want to go to Taco Bell and they want to go to Checkers and everything else, and I'm thinking, what in the world? And so as it turns out, they're not eating at all. And so I thought this was just something my kids were going through, that maybe I had picky kids and they just didn't like the lunch, so I'd even offered to pack their lunch. No, they're not really sandwich people. They really wanted to, you know, they just didn't want to eat. So I was talking to other parents. Their kids aren't eating either. So there's a disconnect somewhere in the lunchroom food, and it's kind of all over. It's not just our schools, it's everywhere. I think that when we attempted to decrease the calories of the lunchroom food, that they quit eating altogether. It wasn't good. And there's so many ways that we can feed the children without it being incredibly expensive, and without it being high in fat content. And so, yeah, I mean, if we could even get to a point where they can pick some of their foods, because they're not being able to make healthy choices anymore. They're just being told what to eat, and it's usually cardboard. And it would be great if they were able to go through the line and say, okay, I would like carrot sticks today instead of potato chips, or, you know, what have you. But yeah, so it's almost a flip, because I think in the attempt to do lower calories, and I understand where we were going with that, we're almost making worse choices, because we're picking these kids up. They haven't eaten all day. They're tired. They're mentally tired. They're physically tired. They're cranky. So you feed them in an attempt to make them in better moods. And yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. All right, now I'm not going to reveal my age this morning. Low 40s. No. Okay, whatever. I'm not going there.
Low 40s.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
But let me ask you a question now. As a nurse practitioner, what was the age of your 3 children, and they're in school currently
14,
now? 14,
12, and 2.
So yeah. 14, 12, and 2. And so when I'm in school, we had we got the hamburger, the tater tots.
That's right.
We got a thing of, I think it was some applesauce, and I think we got sheet cake.
Yes.
What were we doing wrong? I'm serious now, and I'll break it over. In the early 70s, what were we doing wrong then in the lunchroom? And what could we have changed? I'm okay with saying change, because for me, I think some of the schools, I think the vending machine world might have got out of hand.
Yeah.
But as far as the lunch line, take over. What did we get wrong?
I don't know, honestly, that we had it that wrong. I think we thought we did at the time, but now, you know, compared to where we're kind of going with this, I think that a lot of it was probably the way the food was prepared, a lot of the grease and things that we were using, but I do think that you could still have, there's nothing wrong with having a hamburger every now and then. I mean, I love hamburgers. I'm not giving up my hamburgers. I can't eat them every day. You know, none of us can eat this every day. But there's nothing wrong with a lunch plate with a hamburger and you being able to pick a salad, or you being able to pick, you know, a vegetable and a small dessert. the cake slice might have been a little much with the hamburger, but even still, I mean, I think we're trying just a little too hard, and in the end, I think we're just turning our kids into, we're kind of starving them, and then they're going to grab the potato chips. My dad said one time that he thought that the difference between when he was growing up and when I was growing up, he said, you know, you ate lunch because you knew you weren't eating again until dinner. And then, you know, he said when he came home from school, there might be a sliced apple for you. He said, but you waited on dinner. And so he said, you ate lunch, you ate dinner. And he said, you know, and now compared to that, we're feeding our kids all the time. I mean, you know, between every couple of hours, we're stopping at fast food.
Well, I think what you touched on was disciplines.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And I'm not going to say it's not what you're eating, but it has to go with disciplines.
Exactly.
When we got home from school, all the way back then, we got one snack.
That's
you
right.
came in, you got one snack, and then that was it. And, you know, you didn't, you know, I remember hearing, why is that refrigerator door open?
Yes.
Get out of that refrigerator.
That's it.
So
yeah.
Discipline is where you're going with that.
Yeah, and so my 14-year-old, in her freshman health class, they just did a questionnaire where all of the children had to take, I keep calling them children, but all of the students had to do a questionnaire based on their diet. And it was, it could be graded excellent, good, fair, and poor. Now, my daughter is 5'6", and she weighs approximately 110 pounds, so she's not overweight at all. I mean, she's, you know, good, athletic, muscle-built kid. She scored fair on it. No one scored excellent. There were only 2 kids that scored good. Most all of these kids scored fair or poor. So, yeah, I think that we are trying a little too hard to make all of this low-calorie hot meal. Nobody's eating it. And we're going to potato chips and Little Debbie's at the end of the day, Checkers, and not anything against Checkers, but that's where my kid likes to eat after school.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have some people that would have a problem if they couldn't,
yeah.
you know, go. But, you know, the world doesn't end because you balance and do that from time to time.
Absolutely.
What about the schools? I mean, you know, last year, I haven't gotten any reports this year, but last year I would get messages all the time wanting us at fetchernews.com to do some kind of story on these lunchrooms, and their kids were not eating and their kids were hungry. So you're far from the only one that are picking up the kids and they're saying they're starved.
Yeah.
I will say this, you don't have to, but did Michelle Obama get this wrong?
I think a little bit.
A little bit? Okay, I said that.
Bit.
You didn't have to.
Do you remember the lunchroom pizza? Yeah,
I was kidding. I wasn't. Yeah,
you know, I mean,
yes, I do.
We're famous for lunchroom pizza, right? You know, and that was the day when lunchroom pizza came out. That was the day that everybody traded everything they had for that slice of pizza. You know, because my mother always packed
worked
my
out
lunches.
deals. I like that. Yeah, you did. You went to the table.
I mean, you were like, I got a Swiss roll. I got, you know, and you grabbed everything to try to get. You
were working out.
Exactly. You did, because that pizza was delicious. Nobody does that anymore because it's this whole wheat. I've tasted it. I'll be honest. It's cardboard with mozzarella cheese and tomato sauce, and it's just nobody. They're not eating. They're not enjoying their food.
You mean nobody's making a deal trying to trade up for that lunchroom?
Everybody's keeping their Swiss rolls.
And it's so funny you said that because, I mean, this might sound silly, but you know, you're hitting a home run with this because, I mean, it's the things you remember in life. We had sloppy Joe day.
Yes.
We had pizza day. And,
yes.
You know, and that you did some negotiating.
You did. You worked a hard deal, or you even just like I finally, by the time I was in middle school, I was smart enough to ask my parents for $2 that I kept in my bag just in case it was pizza day, because that was the day that I put the lunch to the side and I was like, ha 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 ha.
It's pizza day.
It's pizza day. Yes, you got that pizza. Nobody does that anymore. So I think that there's so much room to teach these kids how to prepare food well, how to prepare it. We have a lot of local people even here that are teaching the kids how to grow the food, how to prepare the food, and it still be good. It still tastes good. It fill them up, it still be healthy, and not taste like cardboard, and maybe they'll start working deals again.
Well, you know, I'm glad we brought that up. Now, talking about kids going back to school, let's also talk about the. We were talking earlier in the break before we started about antibiotics and the children and antibiotics and an overuse of antibiotics. Touch on that a little bit, because I have heard what we started talking about. I've heard over and over, and I want to hear from you about the antibiotics and the overuse of them.
Yeah, this is kind of an epidemic, so to speak. So we're growing up in a kind of helicopter parent world, and I'm just as guilty. But, you know, we want to hand sanitize everything, and we no longer have the resistance to bacteria that we used to. So I will say we are having a little bit of a harder time fighting off bacteria. However,
kids aren't allowed to make a sandwich and go play in the sandbox at the same time anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Sorry, I don't know that that's good or bad, but I mean, you know.
Yeah, gone are the days that, you know, you just had a little dirt on your hands and you ate it anyway. And so, yeah, we've just we've decontaminized everything. And so when I was in primary care, you would have, you know, these patients that would come in, and the first sniffle, you know, they wanted an antibiotic, and we have put a lot of trust into antibiotics, and we're no longer trusting our bodies to fight some of this off ourselves. By criteria, you really should not get an antibiotic until you have had an infection for 7 days, 5 to 7 days, or if it's a sinus infection, you know, maxillofacial pain, that type of thing. It doesn't help against the flu, because flu is viral. It doesn't help actually against 99% of the common cold is viral, and so antibiotics are only going to kill bacteria. They're not going to kill viruses. I always explain it to patients that it's kind of like cleaning your countertop before you put raw chicken on there. People want antibiotics prior to really getting sick. They'll feel a tickle, and they want the antibiotics then. Well, if you clean your countertop and then you put the raw chicken on there, there's still going to be bacteria on there later. You're still going to have to go back and clean it. So it does no good to clean it before you put the bacteria on. Same thing with your sinus infections and your colds. There's no such thing as preventative antibiotics to try to keep this sinus infection from occurring or this bacterial infection from occurring. The bacteria has to get there for there to be something to kill. So early antibiotics, don't do it. Try to let your body stave it off 5 to 7 days of infection, and let your kids be a little bit dirty.
Let your kids be a little bit dirty.
Yeah.
We're here with Cami Ledford, and this segment is brought to you by the Georgia Cancer Specialist. And we've been talking, Cami Ledford's a nurse practitioner. We've been talking, what about the flu shot? Do you recommend the flu shot?
I do. It's, again, won't keep you from getting sick. And I know Dr. Whaley touched on the flu shot last week. It's not going to keep you from getting sick. It may not keep you from getting the flu, but it will definitely help to decrease the severity if you get it. As well as the length of time. And my children will tell you that every time I've gotten the flu shot, they have tested positive for the flu. However, they've been back into the game in about 3 days, so it hasn't been bad.
And right now you can find the flu shot if you just look at a lot of the stores like Ingles and many places
Yes.
like that are offering the flu shot absolutely at no charge too.
Yes, it's either very cheap or free altogether, and now's the time to get it, because you want your body to mount that response and have time. If you wait until flu season is here, it's too late. So now is definitely the time to get it.
Now you're with the Georgia Cancer Specialist, and where do you work at?
I am in the Blue Ridge office with Dr. Whaley, actually, and Dr. Jennifer Jones.
Dr. Whaley.
Yes.
And who is he?
Just
I've already
this
forgot.
guy.
I've heard for who is that guy?
Just this guy.
Just this guy. We love having Dr. Whaley here. We're not going to talk Zika virus because
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely his baby.
Yeah,
We
that's
will
Dr.
let him
Whaley,
have
Zika
that.
virus,
Yes.
and we'll get updates from him this next coming week. Well, Cami, we appreciate you coming here this morning. We
Thank
appreciate.
you.
Are you going to come back?
Absolutely.
See, it wasn't that bad, was it?
It wasn't bad at all.
Okay,
Thanks. Yeah.
okay. So it wasn't that bad. And we've been talking about, kids' health, going back to school, and the lunchroom. What do you think about the lunchroom, and what do you think about the pizza, or lack of pizza, or lack of sloppy joes? We don't think they're that bad, do we? In moderation.
In moderation. Absolutely.
And there has to be some disciplines.
Absolutely.
And I, for one, would tell anybody sodium, sugar, those you have to watch that.
Yes. Yeah,
It-
maybe not sloppy joes and french fries on the same day, but absolutely have sloppy
Well,
joes.
I don't want to take on big corporations this morning on this little show,
Yeah.
but I think maybe vending machines that have things in them could have elevated
Absolutely.
some problems within.
Yeah.
We do have an obesity problem in our schools.
Sure.
So I think
Yeah.
that,
And even to teach the kids how to prepare the food, there's a place for all of that. There's a place for a classroom there that could even be preparing the foods.
preparing the foods. I'm your host, BKP. We're live, Sycamore Crossing, downtown Blue Ridge, and we're going to be back right after this. We're talking blues and barbecue this morning. We're talking politics. We're talking school lunches. You name it, we're talking about it. But don't forget, sorry, Cami, I don't mean to be this way, but always, every Friday, the star of the show comes from the Humane Society of Blue Ridge, our pet of the week. I'll be back after these messages on BKP.